What's up, folks? I'm Odd, by the way, and welcome to my, I guess, almost monthly semi-large project, physical project thing video that I seem to wind up doing, like I said, sometimes at least once a month. And today I figured that I would play around with something, a material that seemed interesting. So a little while ago, I made a mask. Of course, I made Lou. She's up there. I'm not gonna get her. You can go watch that video if you want to go see her. And I was looking up all these different recipes for paper mache and seeing if like maybe paper clay would be something useful. And while I was watching those videos, I wound up getting recommended this thing called cold porcelain a lot, and it's not paper clay, but it is supposed to be an air dry clay that dries very durable and hard. And that sounded interesting to me. I also thought that it'd be interesting, considering the fact that it's called cold porcelain, to sort of make a porcelain doll style creepy cute character. I always love like doing stuff like that if I can, like making something just a little bit creepy. It's, it's a fun vibe. Even though it's midsummer, like I'm still always kind of on the Halloween vibes. And I do love like just as like a relaxing notion almost a nice like doll customizing video. Although, funnily enough, I didn't actually know what one of a kind meant until just this or last year. Like, I knew what one of a kind meant, but like when people would put OOAK into their videos, no clue. Just figured it was some doll maker terminology that I didn't know about, and apparently it kind of was. But it just means one of a kind. So we're going to be making something akin to that today. Of course, it's going to be completely one of a kind because it's not going to be based off of a regular doll's body. It's going to be made out of, hopefully, cold porcelain. And now cold porcelain seems to mostly consist of PVA or white glue or wood glue, depending on like what recipe you're looking at, and cornstarch. So I looked up a good couple videos, wound up going for, I think it was DM's Crafts recipe, wound up making a double batch, which I actually highly regret. So, the initial recipe was like one cup of cornstarch and the white glue, the PVA, and I wound up going for two. I actually kind of ran out of cornstarch, so I supplemented a little bit with flour. And and yeah, that was probably my first mistake in this situation because this process took way longer than it was probably supposed to, I think, due to this. And of course, as well, the original recipe called for 1 tablespoon of like olive or baby oil and 1 tablespoon of vinegar to preserve it. I wound up going for 2 tablespoons of each. And then I microwaved this in 30-second intervals until it started to get a little bit more like thick for about 4 minutes. I don't think that it cooked long enough at that stage, so I spent a good 30 minutes on this Glooblek, this slimy, sticky, like completely stuck to my hand and the mat that I was trying to use for it situation. Finally, after that period of time, and already being on my like already being up and just putting in so much effort to this for several minutes and having my hands undeniably stuck to it, I decided to go through the arduous process of cleaning it up and cooked it a little bit longer. Wound up going through another 2 to 4 minutes of microwaving before it got a little bit more chunky. I assume the idea of the cooking is to also remove some of the moisture from the mixture to kind of thicken it as it goes. When it came out that second time, it was still quite sticky. Probably still needed to be cooked even longer than that. I let it set, covered, of course, by the saran wrap, for like an hour to go walk the dog with my brother. Came back and slowly got it to start sticking to itself alone in a ball and stay that way because there was like a layer of oil on my hands. I wound up just using the olive oil to lube everything up. I expected about a 15 to 30 minute process out of this, and I wound up taking like 4 to 5 hours to get something that was relatively malleable. Um, I can only assume that like the concept is sort of like when you mix cornstarch with liquid, it creates oobleck. And when glue dries, as well as when oobleck dries, it dries relatively hard, so it makes sense that then putting them together would create a malleable but like handleable, dryable kind of air dry clay. So I'm curious to see how it actually works. But yeah, the finished amount, due to it just sticking to my hands and everything else, and having to clean it up and reheat it, it was probably somewhere around a normal batch anyway, and labor of love, I'll tell you, but it's still labor nonetheless. My arms hurt. My biceps still hurt. I went to sleep kind of like phantom thinking about the feeling of the pressure from the Glooblek sticking to my hands and me trying to pull it apart and knead it. And it was so much like weight that like that stuff was heavy along with being sticky, and I'll tell you what, I slept great. But my god, it was so much effort. So yeah, maybe make a small batch to start, especially if you're going for this recipe, and you know, like, make sure you cook it well. Make sure that it's like relative. I think like there's got to be some pretty good like solid globs in there, and it's going to be basically hard to mix with like a spatula by itself. But yeah, at that, I think that we're just going to probably try and hop over, and this is our finished result, by the way. It's looking relatively solid for the most part. It looks like bread dough, and it's been sitting for about 24 hours. So hopefully once I crack into this, I'll be able to make something and let that dry, I assume, for another 24 hours or so. I'm going to work in thin layers and then paint it and go through that whole process. Like I said, semi-large physical project that I have no idea how it will turn out. So join me along for the ride, why don't you? Alright, even though I am usually a digital artist, I do have a few things for sculpting and crafting. Most of this stuff actually came with when I bought the Nerdy Crafters Smart Box, so was gonna have her stuff all over it. I don't really have much affiliation with Jackie. She seems really cool, but I don't know her. I just bought her stuff because I wanted to make a monster, and it seemed interesting. But that means that we have plenty of soft and hard clay tools. We got some brushes over here for when we do eventually paint. We've got clay, of course, and I've got some aluminum foil. And I'm thinking that I'm going to mostly be using aluminum foil for like the bulk of it all, and then I will be going like out from there with any like any details on the head and stuff like that. So I'll keep it in here. It smells like you kind of expect it to. It smells like glue and vinegar and a little bit like oil. Mostly glue. Oh, it's still a little sticky. But it's supposed to be like if I were to take a ball here, it's supposed to get like a teardrop shape when I take it apart. That looks like it might still be a little too malleable, but it's not quite as sticky, and it is workable. It's just very soft compared to other stuff that I've played with in the past. Although it could mostly be the oil, which is still quite heavily present on it. But yeah, I think that I'm going to explain the rest of this process in my speed paint voiceover. So I'll get to you there. Popping over to Clip Studio Paint here for a second, because for my design I wanted to map out sort of a cross between an old porcelain doll and a teddy bear, sort of, with the head, arms, and legs made out of the cold porcelain and the body made out of some sort of fabric. Initially, I wound up thinking of a relatively normal-looking bear design, but I changed it up quite drastically later. We'll get to that. So I have my shapes relatively planned out, a sort of bean-shaped head and something really towing the line between creepy and cute for the face. I really wanted that kind of like old-fashioned, stylized, like old antique doll vibe. So with that in mind, it was time to finally start forming the body. I used aluminum foil to almost kind of sculpt the body parts relatively close to the size I wanted them to be with the clay on. I figured a thin layer would be best and would guarantee it would dry within 24 hours. I tried to make the arms and legs relatively small compared to the head while leaving the hands and feet kind of bear paw shaped and large. I figured it would help make the character look tiny and cute. Somehow over the process though, that kind of went out of the window. The arms and legs are a little disproportionate. In fact, I think they turned out too big somehow. Definitely a little too long. But with everything finally well measured out, it was time to finally... Oh no. Oh, shit. Okay, so situation unfolded where this is still sticky, and I came back with cornstarch because I figured that would help. Beautiful. Is new cornstarch, as you could see. Nothing says stay fresh, no mess. Really? Okay, I think this is getting relatively solid. I'm gonna start... Probably gonna seal this up again and wait. Unfortunately, overnight. Again. Let's see if this maybe soaks in the rest of this. Cornstarch in the middle here, because it's still a little sticky there. But it's much less sticky than it was. I added probably about the amount that was missing from when I mixed this together the first time, so maybe it will actually work. After that second overnight, I still wound up adding like another quarter cup of cornstarch to the mix. I think this one was definitely undercooked, looking at other footage of cold porcelain, but thankfully it isn't unusable without cooking. You just need to add a whole bunch more cornstarch. The finished product wasn't bad. It was still a little sticky, while weirdly enough, having trouble sticking to itself when rolled out. Once this stuff is exposed to air, it definitely starts to dry out really quickly. I got as far as the arms before I actually ran out and had to go make more, surprisingly. This time, I feel like I had actually cooked it long enough, but it still felt like it required way more cornstarch in the end. I think the 1-to-1 ratio just did not wind up working for me. It was a little different though, and I think I should have let it set longer or something because the arms wound up cracking as they dried. I would have been fine with the cracks had they not shown through to the aluminum foil. Initially, I thought I could maybe kind of fill it in with like glue, like a slip almost, because it was made out of glue, but that didn't really work. While I waited for that to dry though, I decided to start working on the fabric body. I went for a pretty simple kind of star shape. Initially, I was going to show the process with my sewing machine, but the sewing machine just sort of stopped working. There's probably string stuck under the bobbin or something, so I'll have to take it apart later. Yay. It's been a minute since I've used it, so it makes sense that something would go wrong. The body was small, anyway, so I wound up just sewing it all by hand, but the fabric I chose for it wound up being this blue felt. Initially, I figured the color wouldn't really matter, but if I intended to cover it with some sort of clothing. But as I worked on the body, I thought it would be cool to have a color scheme that matched it, which is probably advantageous because I wound up not going for the clothing. So I went back to the drawing board, or really just the drawing of the bear, and tried out an alternate color scheme with blue. With the problems with the medium and then my sewing machine, I swear this project was like cursed from the start. I hope this change might, I don't know, please the bear. Sometimes these things tend to make their own decision. When the glue dried and I realized it wasn't going to be as helpful, I added another batch of cold porcelain, this time a non-cooked recipe. This one was closer to 2-to-1 with the cornstarch to glue ratio, which made sense to me, but I think that it was actually a little too heavy on the cornstarch because it was kind of crumbly. I was afraid to add more glue though, so I sort of just added a thin layer of it over the top. A few hours later, I sanded down the other piece and actually got to start painting. I did try to sand down what was there of that initial first layer, but it was still too tacky. I tried initially to kind of match the felt color, although my attempt turned out a little bit darker. I still liked it, so I carried on, mostly coating the face and arms in that first layer of dark blue, then going in with lighter layers going toward the inside of the face and the back of the legs. I liked this version of the design especially because it meant I got to do kind of a porcelain white face with rosy cheeks. The white I used was a chalk base, so the darker colors that didn't have white mixed in showed up a little bit shinier, but don't worry, I will fix that later. I'll admit I'm not the best blender, but I definitely struggled, with transitioning colors, but I think it turned out pretty well. Yes, I used my finger to blend a few times. It worked, and I'm impatient, okay? At least when it comes to some things, and other things I'm consistently stubborn, as we will come to find out. I did keep forgetting to change my water every time I started painting, though. I also had to use newspaper to wipe off my brushes. This is the life of a woman who has run out of paper towels. Leave it to me to just be the most unprepared of all people. The next day came, and I was finally able to paint the arms, along with the brunt of the detail work on the arms and on the legs in phase 2. For the white bits, especially the eyes, I wound up going over them with a paint marker just to kind of smooth out any brush strokes. Initially, I drew in the paw pads dark in the design, or even black, but I decided it would balance out to the design to have some more extra pops of white throughout it, so I made her paw pads white too. I also added some rosy little cheeks before going into the final detail on the eyes, and I added some white star freckles on the face and body by brushing my thumb up against a white tip paintbrush. Then, to even everything out and protect the paint, I used some matte spray sealant, Mr. Super Clear. I did this at night, so the footage I tried to get for it looks kind of low-key like a horror movie. After waiting overnight for that to dry down completely, it was time to assemble the body. You might have noticed I made little thin rings on the end of all the extremities and poked holes in them. Well, my idea was that I had seen similar ish in these old fashioned dolls with similar designs. I figured it would make sense even if the arms, legs, and head were a little heavy in comparison. When it is thin like this, the cold porcelain kind of resembles rawhide, which I guess makes sense. Regardless, it was still a little malleable, but it can crack if you put too much pressure on it. The holes had kind of been obscured by all the other stuff leading up to this, so I wound up having to poke through them with the little clay sculpting dot tool thingy. I went around and secured each limb to the fabric with embroidery thread because I figured it would be more robust to hold up all that cold porcelain, and secured all that even further with glue. I stuffed it with polyfill before eventually putting on the head. Sewing dolls or plushies gets so weird once they have an actual form to them. Yeah, a little facsimile of life. Let me just perform head reattachment surgery on you real quick. This method of securing things was not perfect by any measure, and I think regular dolls have this sort of bib of sorts around the head to sort of anchor the neck, but I didn't totally think of that. It's generally not my favorite thing of all time, but at this point I was just relieved to be somewhat done. So this is Mildred. uh, she's a little bit more frumpy than I really wanted her to be, obviously. Like, I think that she gets the creepy cute vibe across, especially in her face. I don't dislike her face. I think that this turned out pretty nice. I think that the paint job overall is pretty nice, although the white fought me a little bit. Everything about this project fought me. Everything about this project, each individual step had to be dragged out kicking and screaming to be completed. Like, it was utter insanity the amount of like effort that went into some of the smallest things on this. And I don't know if it's the medium, I don't know if it's me, I don't know. This is something I guess that I would try again. That being said, I just don't know if I like the cold porcelain. I don't know if it's really made for something like this kind of art doll vibe. Yeah, just overall, it just did not want to cooperate with me. I don't think it was necessarily that it was bad. I just think that it didn't like me. It did not want to be born. So yeah, this is the amount of sheer effort and time that I put into this. I felt like I had some sort of sunk cost fallacy to just keep going. And I mean, like, I wanted to have a thing. I wanted to complete the thing, and I was, you know, excited about the completion of the thing. It's just that when it finally came all together, I kind of noticed from the start that her head was a little small. I don't know how I even got it like to that, because I swear that I tried to make the arms and legs smaller than they were, but it's just how this turned out. Overall, I think that I learned a lot from this. So I guess that's, you know, a good thing to take out of this overall is learning, but it's one of those moments where I feel bad, I feel weird about making a video about this because it's not a tutorial. It's barely even a process video. It's just me struggling. But that's entertaining, right? So I hope that you enjoyed this process. I hope that you like Mildred as much as you can. Maybe at some point or another I'll try and make her again or make her better. I mean, she's going to sit on my shelf and be lovely and perfect as she is right now. You know, obviously, no offense to her. She looks beautiful. It's just it's me. It's all me. Okay? And my struggles. She kind of looks like she just kind of looks like a guy. like she just kind of looks like she's contemplating her existence right now. She's silly in a you know, in an endearing way. She is silly, and I think that I do like her, you know, as a character in and of herself. I think that this is something that you know, you can't create. It has to come about itself, but at the same time, like, this isn't what I wanted to make. So it's a little bit jarring to deal with, but that's just me kind of holding myself up to a standard that I thought that I could meet that I wound up not meeting. So, yeah. Now I gotta go and edit all of the footage for this. But I hope that you like this video, and I hope that, you know, despite it all, you might be like Mildred. I like her. She's definitely, I mean, obviously I made her so she's grown on me, but like I like her creepy cute vibe, even if she's a little disproportionate. And yeah, obviously I usually do digital art stuff, so if you want to follow me for that or check out my other stuff, feel free to, and then, you know, gauge your reaction based off of those, which are my usual videos. And then maybe subscribe if you want to. Give this video a like if you did like it, if you did like to see me struggle, or just for, you know, emotional support, or if you love Mildred and you hate me for even questioning her existence, because, you know, she's cute. She's just a little frumpy. I don't know. But at that, I think that I'm going to leave this here, and I'll probably show you a couple of nicer pictures that I took of Mildred, show you some of the details. Let me know what you think in the comments. At that, I guess. I'll see y'all next time. Bye-bye. Okay, that is cute. That is cute.